Kamala Harris is the first major party nominee in American history who fundamentally rejects freedom and embraces Marxism, communism, and fascism. You're learning about this. You'll find out nobody knew who she was.
All right, let's talk about something that's actually a threat to democracy. And it's coming from the Democrats. Their obsession with internet censorship and political targeting. Now, they love to throw around the term threat to democracy every time they don't get their way. But what's really dangerous is how they're trying to control what we see, what we say, and who gets targeted. This is Kamala Harris' stance on internet censorship and free speech.
And will put the Department of Justice of the United States back in the business of justice. We will double the Civil Rights Division and direct law enforcement to counter this extremism. We will hold social media platforms accountable for the hate infiltrating their platforms because they have a responsibility to help fight against this threat to our democracy. And if you profit off of hate, if you act as a megaphone for misinformation or cyber warfare, if you don't police your platforms, we are going to hold you accountable as a community.
They say it's all in the name of fighting misinformation, but let's be honest. That's just code for anything we don't agree with. The problem is, when one side of the political spectrum gets to decide what's true and what's allowed to be discussed, you've got a serious problem for democracy. Democracy thrives on debate, free speech, and open dialogue. The moment you start silencing people because you don't like what they're saying, you're not defending democracy, you're undermining it.
Like, I can't be the only one who thinks this is not okay. Like, it's the First Amendment. And no politician, I don't care who you're voting for, whether it's Kamala, Trump, or that one weird guy who was babbling about on stage. We don't even know where he is now. We don't even know if he's still the president. I don't care who you support. But no one should be okay with a politician saying they're going to restrict your First Amendment right on social media platforms. Because this is a government telling a private company to censor people's First Amendment right on their platform. That is the same thing. What the fuck is going on in this country?
This is unprecedented times. While the left keeps claiming they're protecting democracy, what they're really doing is choking it with censorship and political witch hunts. We risk losing the very freedoms that make our country what it is. We can't let the internet become just another tool for political control. Let's listen to this analyst break down the historical crackdown on free speech and censorship.
All right, after Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg made the stunning admission to the House Judiciary Committee on censoring stories, the struggle for freedom of speech online continues, with Elon Musk's X at the forefront of an effort to stop censorship online. Let's bring in Jonathan Turley, a constitutional law attorney and a Fox News contributor. Happy Labor Day to you. Thank you for laboring with us and being here to give us your insights. Free speech, particularly in some of these online platforms, is really under attack all over the globe. We've seen the recent arrest of the CEO of Telegram across the pond, and just to the south of us in Brazil, X taken offline, the courts involved in that. Your thoughts on what's happening globally?
Well, you know, I discussed this in my new book, The Indispensable Right, which looks at what I believe is the most dangerous anti-free speech movement in history. I mean, the book looks historically at all of these movements, but we've never seen anything like this one because of the alliance of corporate, academic, media, and governmental interests. And when you had this recent statement from Zuckerberg, it was more contrived than contrite because he had spent years resisting revealing what are now the Facebook files. That was long after the release of the Twitter files by Elon Musk. It was, in fact, the release of those files and Musk taking down much of the censorship system that made him the target of this anti-free speech movement. And, you know, Zuckerberg and Facebook were a very important part of that movement in censoring people with the coordination of the government. And so these files confirm what many of us have said in testimony to Congress, that we have a system that a federal judge called Orwellian, which is restricting what people can speak, targeting groups, not just in terms of censorship, but even targeting their revenue.
The political targeting doesn't just stop online. Just look at how government agencies under Democrat leadership have been weaponized against political opponents. Tulsi Gabbard just revealed on Twitter how she has been targeted by the government when traveling across the country. It's clear that there's an effort to intimidate and silence anyone who steps out of line with the left's agenda. That's not democracy, that's authoritarianism.
I enlisted in the Army to defeat the Islamist terrorists who attacked us on 9/11 and to keep our country safe. I've served now for over 21 years, deployed to war zones in both the Middle East and Africa, put my life on the line for the freedom and safety of the American people, and still serve today. Now, my own government has placed me on a secret terror watch list, targeting me as a potential domestic terror threat. Why? Political retaliation. I spoke out about how dangerous Kamala Harris would be to our nation if she were to be elected as president, and why the American people should be very concerned. Now, just before boarding a flight on July 23rd, my husband and I were pulled aside for additional TSA screening. Our electronics were swabbed for traces of explosives, and when we landed, my husband was pulled aside for another round of additional screening. On the next several flights that we took, our boarding passes were marked with the Quad S, and we were subjected to in-depth searches by the TSA every single time, each time taking 30 to 45 minutes, every inch of our body patted down, every item in our carry-on searched and swabbed for explosive residue, and sometimes going through this all over again at the gate before being allowed to board the plane. Every time this happened, we were told by the TSA agent there, this is just a random selection. Now that might have been believable if it had happened just once or twice, but 5, 6, 7, 8 times in a row? There's no way. On August 4th, federal air marshal whistleblowers came forward with very disturbing information. They revealed that I had been added to a secret terror watch list run by the TSA called Quiet Skies on July 23rd. This is the very same day my husband and I began to be subjected to those in-depth TSA searches. These are images of the TSA targeting package that the air marshals were given as part of their mission brief. I later learned that at least 3 air marshals were assigned to watch me every time I traveled in the airport and on the flight. TSA deployed explosive K9 detection teams and a TSA explosive specialist. Now, this is extreme by any measure. What were they looking for? What kind of threat did they think I posed? What were they afraid that I was going to do? None of this made sense until I put all the pieces together. On July 21st, President Biden announced he was dropping out of the presidential race and endorsing Kamala Harris to be the Democratic nominee. On July 22nd, I did an interview with Fox News' Laura Ingraham about how dangerous a potential Kamala Harris presidency would be for our country. Here's what I said.
Foreign policy decisions are being made by unelected people in the military-industrial complex who are profiting from us being in a constant state of war, and the national security state that has more power to undermine our freedoms and liberties when we are in a state of war. Kamala Harris does not have the strength to stand up to the military-industrial complex.
The very next day, on July 23rd, the TSA placed me on the Quiet Skies domestic terror watch list, in what I can only describe as the ultimate betrayal. After putting my life on the line to defend the safety and security of the American people, the Harris-Biden regime has now labeled me a domestic terror threat.
You see, when conservatives call the people in power a communist regime, it isn't just hyperbole or political banter. This is real-world tactics being used on the people that oppose them. This is about protecting free speech and keeping the playing field level for everyone, not just the people who happen to agree with the powers that be.
She's promising communist price controls, wealth confiscation, energy annihilation, reparations, the largest tax increase ever imposed, and mass amnesty and citizenship for tens of millions of migrants who will consume trillions of dollars in federal benefits and destroy Social Security and Medicare. They will be destroyed. they're already putting them into your Social Security and Medicare rolls. I am promising low taxes, low regulations, low energy costs, low interest rates, secure borders, low crime, and surging incomes for citizens of every race, religion, color, and creed.